coming up.
Because this is a networking space, who you invite in matters. And if you're inviting small season, that's gonna blow a small up.
Yeah.
That's irresponsible. But I did run into, after I realized my mom and my grandma were homophobic.
Hmm.
I
I stream almost every day on Twitch, but now I'm streaming on YouTube, so be sure to subscribe. For Pride Month, I have been doing interviews to various queer content creators, and this is the first one. So without further ado, Lumi Rue, recorded June 11th, 2024. Yes, can you hear me, Lumi?
I can.
Okay, welcome. How are you
Thank you for
doing?
having me. I'm doing well. How are you?
I'm
Happy
good.
Pride.
Happy Pride. Happy Pride indeed. I'm a little nervous because I haven't had an interview on the channel in a while, like in over a year and a half, probably.
Oh, wow. I totally
So
feel that.
yeah,
Thanks for having me.
yeah. No, of course. I'm having a lot of different guests this month for Pride. Like, you're the first one, so yay.
Thank you again for having me. I appreciate it.
But I've been wanting for a while to interview different people about their experiences in regards to leftism or their, lived experiences in general. And so I'm using Pride as basically an excuse to be able to do this. So yeah, start with you. Who is Lumi? How do you identify with? You know, simple question.
Well, I just consider myself a silly goose on the internet, but in terms of identity and identities related to pride, you I am pansexual, meaning for me, I really focus more on people's personality than their gender or their body parts. Um, I'm polyamorous, so I date and I date more than one person. Everyone knows, etc.
Hmm.
Um, and then I'm non-binary. So I use they, them pronouns, and I consider myself outside of the gender binary. So I think those are my main pride related identities. If you talk about politics, I really struggle to place myself.
Hmm.
I'd say maybe I'm a socialist. Um, but I think I'm still kind of figuring that out. And so I leave it kind of open. What about you?
Interesting. Oh, I mean, I first and foremost identify with like bisexual, but like if we want to get like a specific, I'm more like omnisexual because um like it's like it's not like I don't care the gender of the person. Like I like different genders or I like different things for how people differently identify, I guess, but like I still like everyone. And I'm non-binary. I use it pronouns. I'm a scientific socialist, decolonialist, Peruvian. So yeah, but I know that for a while you were not just going with they them pronouns. You were like kind of trying out kind of like every other non-binary pronoun basically, like everything but he, him, and she, her.
Yeah, so I would still consider myself they them or any neo pronouns. I think in an ideal world, I would go by all pronouns and be comfortable with that. But unfortunately, people just tend to land on she over and over and over again.
Hmm.
Consistent with how people typically see more femme presenting people or femme perceived people. So people haven't used a lot of pronouns. My chat was the most open to playing with the neo pronouns, which has been pretty consistent with my experience with chat, being very open minded and
Hmm.
creative and fun. I think neo pronouns are really cool personally. I think, gender identity is really rooted in identity. And I love to see people be creative and find ways to express who they are. And I think neo pronouns are just uh, that exactly, finding ways
Yeah.
to express who you are and share that with others. So I think they're I'm really happy to see them. But I haven't had a lot of people actually end up using them consistently for me. And I'm okay with that. They, them works really well for me personally. So,
Interesting. Yeah, there's a if people didn't know, I mod for you. I mod in your Discord also. And I remember there was one time one person asked for us to add owo uwu pronouns, which sounds silly, but they were explaining how like they had a personal story of why they wanted to use those pronouns, and I remember thinking, oh, it's kind of silly, but like it's not like I didn't care, but at first I thought, oh, it's kind of silly, and then when they explained it, I was like, I mean, if they are fine with it, like why not? Like let's get fun with it, like if that's how they want to identify, like, and those are the pronouns that they want to use, and they really feel that and identify with that, like why not? And I think that is why I use personally its pronouns, because of how disruptive they are, and that non-binariness of it all, not having to conform to certain expectations of gender, is very liberating. But how would you describe the environment where you grew up in regards to open-mindedness and politics?
open mindedness in politics. So I grew up in a smaller town in Indiana. Um, I didn't realize it at the time because my family was very non-religious. Like my immediate family was very
Hmm.
non-religious and did not discuss politics, right? So I didn't really have that introduction in the home. I didn't really have many thoughts on it. And I think that made kind of the environment fly under the radar for me a bit, but it was I ended up finding out it's fairly homophobic, very
Hmm.
inspired by some more conservative Christianity. There's a lot in the culture there. Very rural, small town kind of America vibes. So
Interesting.
more conservative, not so open minded.
Did you go
Um,
to public school, I assume?
yes, I went to public school for sure.
And was there where you kind of saw like that conservativeness, I guess?
So, yeah, that's where I started seeing it for sure. I was lucky because I feel like I had, like I was around the more goth, emo,
Alternative.
alternative kids, yeah, nerds. And I felt like they were a little more laid back. Not necessarily that their politics were on point, but I did run into, after I realized my mom and my grandma were homophobic,
Hmm.
I participated in this day of silence where we put this tape over our mouths in support of the LGBTQ
Oh,
community. And this is the
interesting.
first time I ran into trans people as a concept because one of my friends got really mad at me the day after I found out. And she was like, well, her sister had come out as her sister and
Mm-hmm.
she was saying it's tearing our family apart. And later I found out like she's not allowed to watch Harry Potter, which now is kind of ironic, right? With JK Rowling being a
Yeah.
massive transphobe, but because that's satanic or like things around that, and I started realizing, okay, also a lot of the like racial dynamics flew under the radar just because I didn't
Hmm.
realize until I substituted in Fort Wayne, which is fairly close to where I had lived. I substituted for an underfunded school. And
You were a
at my
teacher?
school, yeah, I just did subbing for a little bit. So I'm not like subs don't have to be qualified in the same way teachers
Oh,
do.
interesting.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Because you're just, what does the sub come in? They do come in, they just run this lesson plans. They don't know what they're doing.
Wow.
Um, but I realized, like, okay, there were very few non-white people at my school I grew up
Mm-hmm.
in and around. And then I go here and suddenly I'm like, oh my gosh, I didn't even, it was, the school was primarily minorities. And it made me realize how like strictly separate people
Segregated.
were by income,
Yeah.
and how you saw that play out. I was like, oh wow. So I realized a lot of the racial tensions flew under the radar, likely because of that.
Mm-hmm.
And then I realized, okay, well, this is why people were shit talking rap music, for example. This is why, you know, we had the one black friend that didn't. I was always like, oh, that joke feels a little racist, but he didn't say anything. So it was like, and now I think
Oh,
back, I'm like, oh
interesting.
shit. Well, he's the only black kid, you know? So I'm like, damn, from a racial perspective as well, I'm sure it was, you know, there were those tensions, but you don't see them bubble up as much when,
Interesting. When did you come to terms with your queerness, or when did you realize it?
oh man, I had the biggest crush on one of my besties. And I just remember it was probably sixth grade. I remember being like, I don't know.
Interesting.
I feel like I could, like, maybe holding hands is good, but maybe we could kiss kind of vibes. And I didn't because, don't want to like freak my bestie out. But I noticed that I tended to have a close friend, often a close woman friend, and then
Mm-hmm.
frequently developed crushes on them.
And the non-binariness of it all.
The non-binariness of it all was I struggled with gender, especially hitting high school. I mean, I noticed some like gender brushing up against gender roles when I was younger, right?
Mm-hmm.
Really absurd ones. Like my mom thought Pokemon was for boys, which what? Right? Who wouldn't be confused and finding
Interesting.
that absurd? But then as I like got into high school and as I was growing into my body, I realized I was not quite vibing with the ideas of what it was to be a woman.
Mm-hmm.
And I didn't feel like, so when I found out that my friend was upset about the, like her sister coming out as a
Sister.
woman,
Mm-hmm.
it made me realize that, oh, she's talking about someone that's changed their gender. And I thought, huh, is that possible? And I thought about it and I was like, well, I don't
Interesting.
really feel like I am a man, but I really don't feel like a woman. And it wasn't just like brushing up against those
Mm-hmm.
societal constraints that are,
Expectations. Yeah.
yeah, that are put on women, but it was also the, like, I had a lot of discomfort with my breasts and just what I describe now as gender dysphoria. So,
Mm-hmm.
but I didn't have the terminology. I didn't know what non-binary was until actually Twitch.
Interesting.
I started talking politics. Once I started talking, well, more like gender stuff,
Mm-hmm.
I realized I had a lot of trans people in my chat. And I was like, oh no, I don't know anything about trans people. I should probably figure that out because I'm going to say some goofy
Oh, that is
shit.
true. I forget. I forget that you started Twitch longer before I think of you as, because I met you as Lumi, so you were already like non-binary. But then I remember your your dead name, I guess, your
Mhm.
other username, and I'm like, oh yeah, they weren't non-binary when they started Twitch.
Yeah, Eva Una Love. I don't really consider it a dead name so much, but I could see, like, I see why people would view it that way.
Yeah, I mean, I just
But
think I
yeah,
just
I was
love like being dramatic and calling it a dead name, even though I know it's not. But yeah,
the name is dead, let's be real.
true.
But no, yeah, I ran into like, oh, this is happening a lot in my chat. I'm realizing I want to know a little bit more about trans people, and I got into a few like trans Facebook groups, including one for non-binary people and then people just trying to learn about
Hmm.
non-binary people, and I started seeing my experiences talked about, like people having very similar experiences.
Mm-hmm.
And it gave me a lot of the language to articulate what I had already been feeling, but really struggling to talk about. So that was really helpful. Um, and then eventually I
Interesting.
came out to my Twitch chat, and that was the first group I came out to.
The internet trans you. Interesting. Wait,
It's
but
true.
did you have? I know you had breast surgery, but did that happen before Twitch or during Twitch?
No, so I was very, very lucky that my gender affirming breast reduction,
Mm-hmm.
my chat helped me fundraise for that. I would have not been able to,
Oh.
yeah. So, and they followed me through that journey. I even, one of our mods, Fish, came
Mm-hmm.
and was one of the people that helped me recover.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. So, wild thing to go through, but and it was a little tough because I was, you know, chat helped fundraise
Mm-hmm.
for it, and then I started getting really nervous. What if it goes wrong? What if I get too scared? What if I'm unhappy afterwards? And I'd have
Mm.
nightmares of like waking up and it's not just my breasts gone, but my arm is missing. And I'm like, but I didn't want to talk to chat about it, right? And I didn't know who to talk to, so I just kind of went through it, and then
The
I
true
came out
indication
of
of
surgery.
gender, your arm.
Missing arm gender. Oh no. But coming out of surgery, I just I was very happy. And every step of the healing process, I was realizing like, no, this is the right decision for me. So lucky in that sense.
Interesting. And you had mentioned that there was a point where you realized that your mom or your side or that side of the family was homophobic. Like, did you come out in high school to your family?
Oh, this is such a Lumi story. So I again was pretty oblivious to the like the political everything in our
Mm-hmm.
like
Household.
geographic location.
Oh,
Yeah.
okay.
And so I really didn't think it was going to be. I was so naive. I was like, no one is mean to gay people anymore. Like I genuinely thought we had equality in the states. Like I just like through and through. This is pre
Interesting.
women's studies. Like I was like, women have it equal. Like,
Mm-hmm.
I had a very shallow understanding of inequality and how things are in the States. And so it was like, it's not a problem to be gay, and no one's homophobic. Like, I didn't realize how many people were homophobic. And
Mm-hmm.
so I didn't think I needed to come out. And I was so excited, Sebs. I
Mm-hmm.
asked a really cute girl to semi-formal, and she said yes. And not only that, but do you know what Lolita style is? Like Japanese
Yeah.
Lolita style?
Mm-hmm.
I was gonna go in girls, like I'm
Oh
gonna
my
say girl
God.
style Lolita, and
Stop.
she was gonna go on boy style, or Kodoma.
Yeah.
And I was so excited. Like this is peak excitement. Cuz it was my first time ever
Yeah.
asking a girl to anything, and I succeeded. Like, and it was so perfect. So I was like, "Hell yeah, time to party." And I'm like
Yeah.
excitedly telling everyone, and then mom is like, "You're gay?" Oh my god, like, and she started freaking out. Like, that's going to make your life harder, and that's going to make my life harder. You like really
Interesting.
just upset about it, and I was not prepared for that. I wanted to party. I was in party mode. Mom, chill. So I went to, bless my heart, my Catholic grandmother to get comfort about this.
Okay.
And grandma, she was like, "Oh, well, it's okay. I don't know why your mom is freaking out. It's not like you're taking her as anything other than a friend, right?" Oh, grandma, yeah. Like, oh no. So
Oh,
I started
wow.
realizing maybe I had to tread more carefully. And this is one of like the reasons I think coming out can be so important is just you don't want to in a moment of celebration and joy find out someone close to you is a homophobe. Like knock that
Mm-hmm.
shit out when you're not partying, you know?
Yeah.
I'm partying. I don't have time for you to be a homophobe right now.
Okay. How old are you?
I am 29.
Yeah. Like, this is for people to understand that this has been like not that long ago, right? Like, in the grand
Yeah.
scheme of it. But like, because I remember, like, I started watching Twitch or political Twitch when I was like 20. So like for me, you were like so much older. But then when I
Mm.
realized we're like 5 years apart, I'm like, oh, this is like yesterday that happened. You know, like.
Yeah. No, it's not too long ago. And the thing is like you continue to deal with that, you
Mm-hmm.
know. Later in college, I had my partner one of my early girlfriends and we had issues with her family where we'd go and we'd do things with her family and she'd be getting a text from her mom, "You're freaking grandma up, oh, stop holding hands." Like we weren't allowed to hold hands. And just the amount of homophobia we dealt with from her
Oh
family
wow.
was it really actually had a negative impact on our relationship because we were both working so much and in college. And how many times do we get to go out? And then when we go out, we're dealing with homophobia and like I'm sorry, but that's just not a date vibe, you know? Like, and yeah, like, why is one of your dates going with her family? We wanted to see her brothers like play high school
Yeah.
play. So cute little date night. We thought, nope. And it was dealing with those sorts of things kind of over and over again,
Interesting.
whether it be my grandmother not wanting to acknowledge our relationship or that sort of stuff. But there's still plenty of homophobia to be dealt with even
And
today.
and now that we're touching college, like you studied women's studies?
Double study or double majored in women's studies and psychology. But I went for psychology. I just, do you know the story of why I started studying women's studies?
No, I want to know how that came about.
So I had a counselor
Mm-hmm.
who I wasn't really, I don't know if you knew, I wanted to go into the military, but I ended up not going into the military. And all of a sudden, I'm trying to figure out plans really fast, end up at this public school and think, well, what do I want to do? And I thought, I want to help people.
Mm-hmm.
Um, that's all I know that is my passion right now. I just want to help people. So I went into psychology hoping to be able to understand why people struggle and
Mm-hmm.
have some tools to help. And then as I'm picking some classes, probably my second term in, my counselor says, I think you'll really like this women's studies course. It fits really nicely into your schedule and it'll knock out two of your requirements. So I think this would be perfect for you. And I thought, women's studies, what am I going to be doing? Knitting? Like, God, no, get me out of here. Absolutely not. So I was very like, no way, no way. And then she was like, well, and I'm like, okay, like, let's do it. It's obviously not knitting. Also, knitting is cool.
Yes.
Wow, I needed that class. The freaking misogyny there.
Also,
Damn.
knitting and sewing actually important things that everyone should know, like
So the funny thing
survival
is,
skills.
I used to sew like my Lolita skirts, and here I am, like,
Mm-hmm.
I don't want to learn how to knit.
What?
What a loser activity. What am I? Yeah, I know. Listen, we have growth. We have a lot of growth.
Uh.
But I fell in love with it, and I was one of the most vocal people in the class. And she was like, "Hey, do you want to like?" The woman teaching it was the head of the department, and she was like,
Mm-hmm.
"You were very vocal. You seemed very passionate. Do you want to minor in it?" I went into her office, and I ended up just being like, "No, I'm double majoring." So yeah, I loved it, and it really shifted my perspective on a lot of things.
Interesting. What made you be so active or vocal in your in that class?
So I think it was a few things. When I was in high school, I really had this desire to see everyone have a chance,
Mm-hmm.
desire to see everyone have some kindness. You know, I saw my friends get bullied by the asshole bullies, and I wanted everyone to be treated well. And
Same.
I think once I got into that class, I started realizing, like, oh, here are some of the issues I've been struggling with in regards to gender. It covered a lot of topics that I previously hadn't heard about, and the readings were really engaging. So the class was set up in a way that you do readings, and then you'd be in like, you'd come into class and everyone moved their desks into a circle, and it was a
Mm-hmm.
conversational class on these
Oh
readings.
wow.
And I loved that. You know, I felt the questions were so compelling. I had a lot to
Mm-hmm.
say. I just felt like a lot of the topics really pulled me in, and I was super passionate about it. So I felt like I was learning a lot, really enjoyed the subject matter, and like it was a class to open up and have conversations. So I was really passionate about that.
Mm-hmm. The thing I'm asking this question because like here we don't have like that kind of like university college courses. Like you
Do you
can
mean like that style of class?
not that style of class, but like we don't have like we have like engineering. We don't have like studies. Like we have like courses that you will become this if you study this. And so when people go to study like black history, women's history, that kind of thing, that those kinds of like broad studies, like what can you end up being? Do you know what I mean? Because like
That yeah, that's a very good question. So first off, I want to start with, while I was in college, we ended up doing like protests because they were trying to get rid of the philosophy department, the women's studies department, and weirdly geology,
interesting.
which geology has a, so their argumentation, and this is something that was, and I think from my current understanding still
Mm-hmm.
sweeping the states, is this mentality similar to what you seem to have
Mm-hmm.
there, where your degree should go directly to a job. It should
Mm-hmm.
be very clear pathway. Whereas this, like, this was supposed to be applicable in a wide range of areas, whether that be,
Hmm.
you know, something like marketing where you're talking about different demographics, or newspaper work like
Mm.
journalism, writing,
Yeah, more of a like
anything.
consulting kind of thing.
Yeah, and
Mm.
it was supposed to be similarly applicable in ways that like psychology could be applicable, just
Mm-hmm.
more looking at different groups. But I and a lot of the women's studies majors in this particular college oftentimes will go into things like the Center for Nonviolence. So my dream job after
Oh,
college
yeah.
had been that. So that group works not just against, like, not just with people who have experienced domestic violence, but they actually started as a group that was supposed to be stopping the flow of violence against like people in intimate
Yeah.
situations. So they were supposed to be another solution rather than just throwing guys in jail
Mm-hmm.
to men doing violence against their partners. They were supposed to be able to come and like talk about it and talk to someone who works on reducing violence in the
Mm-hmm.
home so that you can also stop it from the side of the people doing the violence. So it does both, but that was my dream job.
Interesting.
And one of my cohorts, the people in my cohorts, she is working there now. She specifically works like with black women. She's got a black women's group that she assists. Um, so
Oh
it's a
wow.
very like, that would have been my dream,
Mm-hmm.
but now I'm going a different route.
Yeah, now you're stuck on Twitch. Fine, whatever.
I'm actually going to be going for my master's next, and I want to be a marriage and family therapist.
Yes, like
Sex therapist.
yeah, every time you mention it, I'm so excited. Like,
I can't wait.
uh, but oh, that's interesting. Like, this is why I'm like you mentioned all of that, but every time you mention like an organization like that, I hate that the first thing that my mind goes to is like, okay, but how do they make the money? And it's not even like
Yeah.
because I think like they should be making money. It's because like I know that if they are not sustainable monetarily, like they won't exist and they won't be able to do their work, you know?
Yeah,
And so
absolutely.
I that like that's kind of like my concern in that way. Is like I know that that job is important, that that work is important, and I would like them to continue, but like how can they continue existing? You know what I mean?
Absolutely. I think they get some I think people fundraise for them. I was going to
Mm-hmm.
offer to do that. I just had trouble getting in contact. Finally did. But I don't know if the city helps fund them. That's a good question. If you're talking about the Center for
Mm-hmm.
Nonviolence. And then I also wanted to circle back and just challenge that the idea that the university should be pumping out workers. Well, you just
Mm-hmm.
hit on that very practical sense of not only does the organization need money to keep going, so do we. We
Yeah.
as college people who go through college, like I don't know about where you are, but for
Mm-hmm.
us, it's very expensive. So
Where
it's
am I,
hard to
Lumi?
justify. You're gonna fucking I'm gonna be so wrong. This is gonna be so bad. Peru?
Yes. Okay.
Oh shit. I was
You've been
like,
getting it right the last couple of times. Like, look, I cannot shit on you. Like, you're remembering. You're remembering.
I'm listen. I'm still getting over seeing about eating me alive for the Finland versus Sweden. Like
Look,
fuck.
I look whenever anyone is in Northern Europe, I just say Sweden, and if it's not Sweden, I just say, well, all the Nordic countries, all the Nordic countries are Sweden, so you are still in Sweden.
Oh no.
And the
Oh
worst
no.
part, no, like the worst part is that I am like genuinely, I am joking, of course, but they go, I mean, yeah, like, and I'm like, no, yeah, your country matter.
Rip.
But like, yeah, but
But
yeah, everything's with it.
it's sad to see that we have to have that focus though, because universities, that's I want us to all be educated and have access to education, and not just education that pushes us into a job, but
Mhm,
education that widens our worldview. And I think that's one of the reasons I got a lot from my psych degree, but I got so much more just in critical thinking
mhm.
from my women's studies degree. And I'm so grateful I got that. I wish that was accessible to more people.
Oh no, yeah, no, this is education should be free for everyone. It should be like high quality education that is accessible, and everyone should be prepared. Because like, for example, I when I went to university, like I went to a private university. Like most universities here are private. Like there are some like literally like two good public universities that are free, but they are also super highly competitive. Uh, but I remember on the second semester we had math, and like I was studying graphic design, but we still had some like basic courses, and there was math. And I had a friend that had gone. I went to private high school also, and my friend had gone to just public high school. He didn't know how to multiply.
That's ooh.
Like
At a college
I
level?
yeah,
Oh.
I literally like because I was helping him, and I realized, oh, you don't know how to multiply. I had to
That
take a
is, yeah,
moment
that's
to
the whole
cry in the
thing.
bathroom, like it, because like that's when reality hits you, or like, oh, like our system is not like just failing people, like it's like destroy, like not allowing them to like fully develop and exist, and like, you know, and it's so unfair because like even when he is allowed in a university, a college, in that kind of environment, they are still not able to properly fully absorb everything because
Yeah, that puts you way behind. Like if
yeah,
you're learning to multiply when everyone else is like, that's a basic component, that's gonna put you wildly behind. Absolutely.
yeah,
That's
it's,
really sad.
and like it, like we might not see it, but like it will affect their confidence, their like how they feel about themselves, how they even like portray themselves and move themselves around the university, and in the future in the professional world, you know. And that's one of the things that people don't think about when talking about like privilege and like the lack of access to resources, you know. It's like it's not about just those material things that we see, like literally accessing education, but also like how all the lack of those resources have affected them at a psychological level, you know. But yeah.
Do you see that as indicative of the quality of your public education versus your private education?
Oh yeah. Like,
Mm.
I mean, like I know that not all people who have gone to public school don't know how to multiply. Uh, but like the worst student in my private high school would still know how to multiply. You know what I mean? Like that kind of like the fact that my friend was allowed to graduate high school at that level, or at least at the very least in math, is like, oh wow, like there is
Something's
no,
going wrong.
yeah,
Yeah. Wow.
yeah. So you, oh, how did, mm, I know you cut your mom at one point,
Cut
right?
off from my mother, like cut
Yeah,
communication.
yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, we talk now, but yeah, that was over a lot of things, but the last straw ended up her being wildly disrespectful about me being non-binary time after time again in
Mm.
ways that were really hurtful. Um
Oh, this was
so
also like recent.
so I recently started talking to her again, but I went
Mm-hmm.
years without talking to her. So it was post high school, maybe post college. I think I might have cut off from her after I moved around the like Maryland, Virginia area, the DC area.
Mm-hmm.
Um but yeah, so a few events leading up to it is just her consistently being
Mm-hmm.
disrespectful of me, whether it be, you know, when I was younger, being very controlling of my hair when I didn't want my hair bleached blonde again, you know, being controlling of my style, not so I don't know if you know, I've had my name legally changed as well before I was non-binary to a name that is a lot more non-binary.
Oh, okay.
Um,
Oh, wow.
so yeah, there were
Mm-hmm.
plenty of signs, like, but I literally chose like a less
Wait, you had
genderful
changed your
name.
name before knowing you were non-binary?
Yeah, 6th grade, I started going by a name that I made up that I liked because it sounded less gendered.
Oh my god,
Yeah.
I love that.
And so one of my fights with her consistently was Mom, I want to change my name before I was 18, right? Because you
Mm.
need parents'
Yeah.
permission. And dad wasn't trying to step on toes, and mom was a monster about it. She was like, no, I gave you that name. I'm like, Mom, the longest you probably thought about that name is 9 months. My understanding is your story is you and dad both agreed that name was the name you didn't hate. Stop acting like you're gonna be fucking so hurt about this, Mom. Chill. But then she'd cry, she'd go, oh my God, I gave you that name. Why are you doing this to hurt me? I'm like, Mom, I'm not doing this to hurt you. I'm the
Mhm.
one who wears the name day by day. I know you might not like it, but I thought about this a long time. I've been going by this since 6th grade, Mom. Let me change my name. And she wouldn't. So, right when I hit teen, I got in there, I changed my name, shaved my fucking head. I was having a
Let's
hinged time. Like, it
go.
was fine. It did go very well. I loved, there is nothing more freeing than jumping into a pool after your head is freshly shaved.
Yes.
Nothing's got to dry except for your swimsuit. Like,
Literally.
no problems with hair. Love that for me. Miss that. Miss those days. But all the through that, it wasn't even the disagreement, right? It was, I would write down reasons why I wanted to change my name, but instead of engaging with me, she would simply cry and say I was
Mhm.
doing it to hurt her. And I can't have a conversation with you about anything,
Yeah.
anything serious without you turning yourself into the victim when I'm trying to give you space and then very reasonably sit down and talk to you about why. But it could boil down to 3 events. The first one was, at this time, I'm so difficult. I went vegan, Lord. Um, and she was having a Thanksgiving. Ugh. And sorry.
Yes.
Sorry, there's
Fuck Thanksgiving. Yes.
no, honestly, yes. Um, and but I was like, hey, I I'm gonna bring something vegan, but do you want me to come and help you make something vegan too? Because I would go and do that. And she was like, no, 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 I'll have something vegan. I'll have something vegan. And I was very hesitant because the last time she told me she'd have something vegan, do you know like spaghetti with like meat crumbles in it?
Oh,
She told me to pick the meat crumbles out.
oh my god.
Like, how, mom? What are you doing? Absurd. But this time it was just like the thing was cheesy. And I'm like, Mom, it's vegetarian. Thank you so much for trying. But so that was heartbreaking. And
Yeah.
then I just learned with my dad how to be like, hey, I'm going to correct you on my pronouns. We're a team kind of deal. I got this
Mhm.
whole little spiel down. And I was collecting my lack of vegan food. So I'm putting like celery on my plate, and she's over
Yes.
there and she misgenders me. And I just did this with dad. So I go, hey, Mom, I know that this is probably really new to you. I know there aren't a lot of out and open non binary people because I've already had this conversation with her, right?
Mhm.
And now she's misgendering me. And I'm like, can I be your teammate
Mhm.
to help you work on getting the pronouns? Because I know it's such a default thing. And I'm like, I am already exhausted, right? I'm at Thanksgiving, first of all. Then I can't even eat more than half the stuff there. And and then she laughs at me over this like
Oh.
opening to her. And I remember my eyes just, I could feel it. You know how your eyes are brimming with tears, your
Mm.
nose fucking hurts. And I turn, and luckily my sister is there. She's the realest family member ever. And she saw just the impact of that. Cause I've dealt with the family a lot, but I feel like the first time my sister and I got to really connect on that
Mhm.
and she got to see like the impact. But then after that, it was like she called me an it on Facebook, which if you use it, it's pronouns, that's poggers. But
Oh my
if you
god, me.
don't, yeah,
I
if
know.
you don't,
Yeah,
like,
yeah. Oh
bruh.
wow.
And it was like my sister, my brother, and I all had birthdays around the same time. So she was like, sibling A, da 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 da, sibling C, da 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 da, and then it, and then talked about me. Like literally was saying their names, then used it for me. I was like, and then I tried to talk to her about it in a phone call, and she was just like, "Are you going to do this to grandpa too?" And I was like, "That's it, mom. I'm not talking to you anymore. I'm blocking you." And then I did for like,
Oh wow.
yeah, I was just like, "Listen, until you want to like, I'm at the point where if you're not using my pronouns because of how awful you've been, I just don't want to be around. I
And
don't
then
want to be
using
around."
pronouns that are not even yours. Oh my god.
Goodness.
Uh,
Goodness. So, but we're back talking. She is doing a lot better. We still don't see eye to eye on everything, but there
did
is
something
hope.
happen, or did you just like, okay, it's been like enough, like I'm going to try to get back this relationship?
So she reached out and she did not. I just heard through someone else that she really needed to talk to me for some reason. And it was over the silliest thing. She had a dog that she wanted to know if I wanted to house. And
Mm-hmm.
so I went to talk to her about that. And then when we were talking, I brought it up and she apologized. And I felt like, okay, well, if you're willing to, work with me on
Mm-hmm.
this, then I'm happy to be back in your life. And I just decided like it had been a while. We were already in call. Might as well try it. And then when I went back, like, she had vegan food at the house for me. She has an ungodly amount of plants, which I don't know if you know, I'm a
Oh
fucking
my
plant
god.
person. So I walk in and it's like a jungle of plants and I'm like, hell yeah. And we connected. We again still don't see eye to eye
Mm-hmm.
and but I definitely feel like she's treating me with a lot more respect and I think that's just some parents need to recognize that you're your own person and that just because they're blood family doesn't mean they can mistreat you to no end without you walking away, you
Yeah.
know?
No, yeah, I see this like people tend to treat children as their like ownership. That's like, oh, you are mine, and so I get to do whatever I want with no like boundaries, and sometimes forget that they are like humans and not just children, but also like when they are your children, like parents will. But yeah,
They have this whole vision of how they want you to be. Not all
yeah,
parents, but some
no, but
parents
yeah,
have a really bad mentality on that. And it can be so damaging for
um,
that growing person, for sure.
how mm, how did you find streaming?
um, League of Legends. I had a boyfriend who introduced me to League of Legends and did not help me realize that going two people down mid was not okay and what farming was. He didn't help me on anything, but he wanted to be a Twitch streamer. And so that's how I found Twitch. And then I was like, I was playing so much League and he wasn't helping me learn anything. So I started streaming it and getting help from people online. And then I passed him on League and I became a Twitch streamer. So it worked out pretty nice.
Okay, he wanted to be a streamer. You were both playing League of Legends,
Mm.
but you were bad at it. So you
Yeah.
decided to stream based on the fact that he wanted to be a streamer, and you ended up being successful at both and left
So
him behind.
I didn't like stream because I was like, oh, he wants to be a streamer. I'm gonna try it. I was like, well, I'm already playing an ungodly amount of League, and this motherfucker isn't helping me
Interesting.
a bit.
Was this
So I'm gonna
during
stream it.
college?
Yeah. Yeah. He
Okay.
was like an early college partner. But I just started streaming because I was like, okay, someone online will surely help me. Because if you just go in the games, you deal with a lot of people who are really mean. League is not, it has a bad reputation for a reason. And so I was getting flamed to hell, and I got so used to being flamed over little stuff that I just assumed everyone flaming me was wrong. So they'd be flaming me
I
over like
mean,
not farming. I didn't even know what farming was, and I was just like, "LOL, this motherfucker doesn't know how to play the game." And I was so wrong, you know. And then I realized like, oh, I need help, and he's not helping. I just need to find people online, and I started streaming because I just played so much and I wanted a community. And then yeah, I passed him on League, and I
and the rest is history.
yeah. So and then my stream did ended up blowing up, but not over League. So
When did that change happen of from league to actual like talking politics? You know.
I was playing League for a while, and then I was like, I want to build my channel more. So I looked into like I had this phase where I was trying to find out how to grow your channel, and it was like
Mm-hmm.
play variety games, and I was like, ooh, I'd like to play a variety of games. So I started playing with that. My numbers started steadily growing. And then I met a viewer who ended up becoming a fairly long term viewer. And throughout the League days, it was like just a little bit after Gamergate, I believe. And I was
Oh,
dealing with a
interesting.
lot of harassment because I was calling myself a feminist on my profile.
Mm-hmm.
And so I took feminist off, but I still wanted like an inclusive community. So I started like dog whistling for feminism. I was like, this is an inclusive space. I was like, I don't want to deal with rape threats, but I do want to deal with like sweetie pies in my chat who are inclusive, you know? So I'm like, how do I get this? I'm like, I'll put inclusive in my like in my
Mm-hmm.
description. But then one day, I don't know how it came up, but there was a huge fight that broke out in chat, then got over into the Discord about whether or not white privilege existed. And I was like, I have a
Interesting.
degree in like talking about inequality and oppression, and it made me feel like I was failing my degree. I felt
Interesting.
guilty about that, and like the amount of it, I was like, what is happening in my community right now? So
White
I was
people
like,
are
I'm gonna start
happening.
talking about it. And then I did my first PowerPoint stream.
Interesting.
And then I got into the educational space. But what blew me up was the politics scene was just starting.
Yeah,
And
and
I got
like
pulled onto what was at the time Raj Royale.
yeah, the debates and stuff, and
Yep.
it's like people don't understand how it's because like I meet people who are like who have been like coming up in the politics space like just like in the last year, and like how do I explain it? I've always been in communities where like debate wasn't like necessarily like looked down, but definitely was like, oh, beware of like the debate sphere. And so now I see people that are coming up in politics and are like, I would never debate. But like back in the day, that was all there was in politics, you know, and like that is how you networked back in the day, like through the debate sphere, through being in debates, through being those spaces, because there was no other space, you know? And so like yeah, it's like I see a lot of people being like, "Oh, I would never do debates," and I don't know how people ever did debates, and it's like, well, like that was just the nature of, like that is how the sphere was, you know?
Yeah, I think it also like there was a different aware I didn't know what I was getting into necessarily, right? I didn't
Mm,
have all this like idea around the debate sphere. I just knew like, oh, I got invited on this large panel and we're going to talk some issues that are related to the topics I do. And some people are really aggressive on it, but you can also be chill and just have conversation. And as
yeah,
someone that was from Indiana, like I don't have the privilege of not ever engaging with people who disagree with me.
Hmm.
So I like it was very natural for me to want to learn to have those conversations. But I also think that debate is like, especially a one-on-one debate. I think there are some issues with the debate panels themselves. Like one of the last debate panels I went on had a literal like Nazi, and he was absurd. Like there was no
Hmm.
talking to him, and it was really disappointing. Um and I was just like, we muted him and we had a very quiet, amusing panel because he'd start rattling off and we just watch everyone's expressions at his absurdity because he'd just say absurd things. Like, it was
Hmm.
just absurd. But I was really upset about that because he was a smaller streamer. They were pulling him on for the absurdity and the views.
Yeah.
And I'm like, this is the kind of, because this is a networking space, who you invite in matters. And if you're inviting small Nazis in, that's going to blow a small Nazi up.
Yeah.
That's fucking irresponsible. So there are like some things to keep in mind for sure. But I think like, I wish I could have genuine conversations with streamers on topics where we do disagree. I
Hmm.
think it gets difficult because I've noticed that even when I was in that larger panel, I'd have people that I'd be DMing and I'd start shifting them on topics, but then they had to perform for their chat.
Yeah.
And so they wouldn't
Hmm.
shift publicly. It takes a lot of strength, I think,
Vulnerability.
vulnerability, ability to be attacked by your chat. And I think that can be really scary for people. And so I'm black pilled on kind of both of them, but I also like I do wish that I could be in those conversations. That's one of the reasons I'm going to be canvassing in a few weeks here because I
Hmm.
want to talk to people who don't have like a huge chat behind them that they're trying to appease, you know.
Hmm.
Um I want to talk to your day to day people and have deep conversations and see where they're coming from and see what their issues are. And I know I won't agree with a lot of them. And I know I won't necessarily agree with the people I'm working with in doing that. But,
Yeah.
I hope there's something that comes out of it.
No, yeah, like people people sometimes in online spaces forget how important it is to actually communicate with people with like the the normies, for lack of a better word, that are like outside these political spaces, in internet political spaces or political spaces in general, like that are just like doing their 9 to 5 or working 2 jobs, and they are just trying to pay rent, and that's it. And they just go on TikTok for like an hour in their commute to distract and get their mind off of like the suffering capitalistic life that they have to live in order to survive. And so those conversations like are definitely important. And it's interesting because um people sometimes think that in order to pull someone, you have to like debate them, or not necessarily debate them, but like you have to like be aggressive, and that's not just not the case. Like I remember a couple of years ago, I was watching a panel, uh, or there was a communist talking about their experiences canvassing for Bernie. And even when they were canvassing for Bernie, they were still a communist, but um, they were making the case against patsocks. Do you know what a patsocks is? Patsocks are these people calling themselves patriotic communists that are basically using communist aesthetics, but being but like catering towards the uh, the cishet white male audience, if you will. And so they will like, blame women, blame feminism, but still like want communism, which is like counterproductive, but whatever. And so this communist in the panel was talking about how when he was canvassing for Bernie in a red state as a black man, he could push people, he could push rednecks into agreeing with him, and he didn't have to be transphobic about it. He didn't have to put women down or like shit on any minorities in order to for conservatives to change their mind or to say, oh yeah, like Medicare for all would actually be beneficial for me too, you know, and like those kinds of like those kind of conversations of seeing that humanity in people are actually important, you know. But yeah, um, yeah. So you were, you felt compelled to start talking about politics because of that happenstance in your chat, and then how did you, and you had your first PowerPoint PowerPoint stream. Did you completely shift everything from then, or how did you went about it? How did you go
That's
about it?
such an interesting question. I think I slowly shift. I think I mixed gaming with that. And then as I got pulled onto that panel, I realized I enjoy just chatting a lot. So I continued the gaming streams for a while. But after I started getting more into talking like politics and the whatnot, I realized it was just I was enjoying that a lot more. And it seemed like my chat was too. So I steadily shifted over. And this is something that I still kind of deal with is when I switch over to games, there's less interest than if I'm talking about something.
Hmm.
And so sometimes I want to play games, but I'm like, I show up on Twitch to hang out with my chat. And if I'm going
Yeah.
to lose half my chat over playing games, like, what's the point? I'm losing half the reason I'm there. Half my chat, my whole reason is chat. So I think the switch was pretty gradual, but yeah. And I used to like the PowerPoint days was hard because I was doing so much prep that I think would have actually been better suited to something like a polished YouTube video.
Hmm.
But I was a streamer. I didn't know how to do any of that. So
How do you feel like streaming has helped you develop as a feminist, leftist, your ideology as a whole? Or have you felt like it has probably even stunted your development in that way? Because like how you mentioned, and we were talking about like in these debate panels, like these people have to perform for their chat, right? And so like I see a lot of people that I've talked offline, and they will present me, they will literally be talking to me about like they will give me communist arguments. They, if you didn't know their public persona, they might as well be a socialist, but then when they are online, their online persona is like a liberal. It's like you know, it's like completely different. And so I see how like having to present oneself in a certain way online can, again, not necessarily stunt someone's development, but definitely not allow them to develop further ideologically.
I feel like there have been points where I have struggled to continue talking specifically electoral politics because understandably people fucking hate the topic. We all hate the topic. But I got really exhausted when everyone's like very frustrated and I'm frustrated. And then I'm like, well, I don't want to be on here just upsetting everyone and I don't have solutions. So I for a while was shying away from electoral politics. And I feel like, oh, fuck, I am not, let me be very clear, I'm not a fan of Biden. I'm
Hmm.
not. I think he's actively doing genocide, not a great thing. Um, Important statements here. Genocide bad. Um, and so I am dreading, a lot of focus is on the presidential election in the states, right? A
Mm-hmm.
lot of people focus on that, and I've noticed, just because of like the stressful situation we're in, and
Mm-hmm.
how electoral politics isn't a solution in and of itself. I see it as just potentially stemming the like tide of fascism, if that makes sense. Um, or stemming things from getting actively a lot worse a lot quicker. And I'll be frank, I'm not 100% sure. I'm learning constantly, but I've noticed because of how stressful the environment is, I
Mm-hmm.
withdrew from talking about it, and I didn't, because I spend time, I've got a lot of things going on top of stream, and I've my stream time to focus on things. I'm learning with stream. And if I'm
Mm-hmm.
not learning about electoral politics, I've fallen behind. Like, I don't know what's been going on.
Oh,
Whereas if I
no,
had like
continue.
I've fallen behind, and that's something that is stressful to me.
Mm-hmm.
Now, I think that was something I should have probably just been stronger, powered through. But I mean, I don't know. I don't feel like all the time you have to suffer through the most miserable things on stream, because if you're hating stream might be hating stream, like chat might be hating stream. And I don't think that's ideal. So I've struggled with like, how do I navigate that? And right now I'm just trying to catch up a little bit, because I think it is important to stay informed with what's going on around you.
Mm-hmm.
And I feel like I stuck my head in the sand because I didn't want to deal with the news, because I didn't want to be miserable with chat. And now I'm like, well, fuck, I should have done it anyway. But with people telling me over and over, it doesn't matter, like, well, I think it matters. If at
Mm-hmm.
least to not like vote in someone who is actively further dismantling democracy. But and then, fighting against APAC, which is why I'm going to support Bowman. Is he's one of the few people who, doesn't have the just let Israel do what they will mentality in American politics right now, electoral
Mm-hmm.
politics, that is. So I think that's one of the areas. Outside of that, I feel like I've learned a lot, actually. My chat brings perspectives that I wouldn't usually have right at my fingertips
Mm-hmm.
necessarily, unless I'm like on Twitter, and like, I don't know about all that. I'd rather not. That's more miserable than talking electoral politics. That's like
Yeah.
the worst of everything. At least my Twitter, I've noticed the feed is just god
No,
awful.
Twitter overall. Like people say Twitter since Elon took over
It
and
was before that.
it,
I
it
mean,
need
it's worse
it like it
now,
was before
but
that, but definitely is worse.
oh, it's definitely worse.
Interesting. Do you feel like the education that you received in college helped you as a base to know like do you feel like that education gave you like a better compass?
Yes. Actually, one of the reasons I felt comfortable coming on and talking about a lot of the things I did was that base. Um, and I think it got a few things wrong, like on disability rights. They had a little thing that was talking about, oh, what was it? Um, differently abled, which I know a lot of
Mm,
disabled people don't like, right? But I actually, as I'm moving through and learning more and hearing more perspectives, I'm like, actually, there were some pretty helpful things in helping me get kind of the basis of um not engaging in really fucked up colonizing behavior while talking to feminists from other countries, and
mm,
like orienting yourself in that, which is something I like. At the time, I didn't have any grounding on anything
yeah.
international, and then it's already kind of going in that route. So I'm really grateful for that, because it's helped me like process some of Judith Butler's book, their most recent book that Philosophy Tube was talking about.
Mm,
Like, sections of that talk about international law in regards to gay rights, and how to go about that, how some of the like neoliberal policies have damaged gay rights,
Mm-hmm.
enforcing them in a way that could be seen, and I wouldn't say could be seen, is definitely um just
Perceive.
it's no, it's definitely
Oh.
colonizing.
Oh,
Like
okay,
it's
got it.
forceful, and there you can support people, that are gender and sexuality minorities without being a
Without
colonizer
having to
by it,
enforce it. Yeah.
yeah. And I think if I didn't have some of that grounding, I would be like, what? Like, this seems like it's just not supporting the gays. But
Yeah.
I feel like I got some of that backing, and then some of like the general feminist theory. So I do think it gave me a lot of help in that sense. Yeah.
Yeah, I
I am
see.
gonna, sorry, I'm gonna take one more question and then I gotta pop off because I've got some
Yes,
stuff
no,
this
no worries.
evening. But
This is the last question. Don't worry. Because I see that a lot of academia, like academia tends to have has this liberal framework, and so they tend to like overcorrect sometimes to a fault where it's like it gets to a point where it's like no longer useful, that like it doesn't end up helping anyone, you know. But what do you think has been the mm, how do I word this? I'm going to word it in the extreme way first, and then I'll try to word it in the like normal way. But like, what do you think has helped you like liberate you from the shackles of liberal academia? What kind of information or education, mm, online or during streaming, has helped you to like get radicalized basically, or more radical, or like
so this may be kind of surprising, but I genuinely feel like I got my anti capitalism starting in college. I was challenged on, like in college, I got my Make Love, Not War
mm-hmm,
tattoo, peace sign right here. But that was right before we went on a section on like talking about the history of political violence and why that might sometimes be really necessary, right? Because there are situations all across the world where there's really no other solution.
mm-hmm,
And so a lot of the things, it wasn't that that was the whole mentality of the program, right? We definitely ran into super liberal pieces, but our first class in our women's studies, our capstone course, was talking about liberal versus radical, and went through pieces that were liberal and pieces that were radical. So this isn't to say like, oh, academia isn't liberal or I,
mm-hmm,
it's not to claim that, but I was grateful that in those areas I did get some radical pieces, not all radical
mm-hmm,
pieces, but that helped me. And then furthermore, like, this isn't like past college, right? But just living, like
mm,
having to go to the hospital, having to deal with
yeah,
my apartment being condemned, like this shit'll do a number to you. Seeing, rent go up and my neighbors have to move and thinking, fuck, I didn't get to unionize because we lost half of our people
tenants,
in
yeah,
the condemning, And so I'd say just living, really living in those conditions, and that'll really do it to you. Um, outside of that, like hearing people talk about things and then looking into it a little bit later as I can, whether that be land back or, you know, colonialism, two
yeah,
areas that I definitely have a lot more work to do on. There's so much to learn from the people we're around. So
yeah. when you talk about your tattoo about peace and how you sometimes like kind of regret it, I don't know if you fully regret it. I don't think you should regret it because at the end of the day, like peace is what we strive for. Like even when we have to go through violence, through war, like it's because we want peace at the end of the day because we want to stop the suffering, you know?
Oh yeah. So that tattoo, I do not regret it. I don't regret any of my tattoos. I see them as like a very clear piece of my story. And that drive is still a part of me. And you'll like definitely see that.
Hmm.
My end goal is always peace. But I think there can be that sentiment to be horrified when you see any violence anywhere else in the world and not look at like, okay, what was the context? Yes, of
Yeah.
course, we don't want to see people die. We don't want to see any of this. We didn't want to see, you know, I won't get into specifics right now, but like, we don't want to see those things happen.
Hmm.
At the same time,
I know what you're thinking about.
what condition were the people in? And are you really going to blame them for lashing out? um I think understanding the world around you, you need that reality. And so I did
Hmm.
shift from being this diehard, I would never like, I didn't even like, I was at the point where if I needed to defend myself, I would have never. I just didn't.
Mm.
And now I'm at the point that I'm like, that's absurd. That's absurd. And taking that morality to the extreme just enables people to treat others horribly. That's unacceptable. So,
The
still,
paradox of
I am still
tolerance.
very make love, not war, but with context. And I'm sorry, what
Yeah.
did you say? I talked
Oh,
over you.
like the paradox of tolerance, how like you tolerate
Yeah.
everyone, including the people who don't tolerate people, and it's like then you're just allowing the violence to continue, you know?
Well, thank you so much for having me on, Sebs.
Yes. Before you go, I do want to recommend you a book called Bury the Corpse of Colonialism. I will send you the name in DMs, don't worry. I will put it also in
Thank you.
chat. But it's about this revolutionary feminist communist conference that happened in China right after the revolution. Women from all across the world went to China. There was a woman who walked from Vietnam to China to get to the conference.
Oh
And
my
in
God.
in this conference, they developed the language of peace around the world and how like peace is something that we want to strive for. Like peace is something revolutionary, something that like something good. And it's not about like not doing war or not defending ourselves, but understanding that at the end of the day, peace is something that we should be able to pursue and not just let the basically liberals be like, oh, we want peace for the sake of erasing that self-defense mentality. But yeah.
I would love to check into that. Please do send that over to me. Thank you so much.
Yeah. No, thank you for being here, for accepting the request. And yeah, I loved you having here. Thank you.
Happy Pride, and I hope the rest of your interviews go wonderfully.
Happy Pride to you too, Lumi. Thank you for coming.
All right, have a good night and bye.
Bye. Thank you everyone so much for watching and listening. Be sure to subscribe, like, and leave a comment. And more episodes coming soon.